It's a crisp October evening in 2005, and I'm 19 years old, full of that restless energy you have when you're young and life feels like it's just beginning. My girlfriend, Sarah, and I have been volunteering at a homeless shelter for a few months, living there too, which sounds noble until you realize how exhausting it can be. The shelter was a chaotic mix of clanging pots, murmured conversations, and the constant shuffle of feet on worn linoleum floors. We loved the work, helping people, making a difference, but it came with rules. One big one: guys and girls couldn't share rooms. So, Sarah and I, craving some time alone, decided to splurge on a weekend getaway at a hotel nearby. Just 2 nights to breathe, to be us, away from the shelter's relentless rhythm, that we picked the Grandview Hotel, a name that sounded fancier than the place actually was. I'd driven past it a few times, a tall, aging building with a brick facade that had faded from red to a dusty rose. It wasn't far from a shelter, maybe a 20-minute walk through streets lined with leafless trees and flickering streetlights. That Friday, after our shift ended, we grabbed our backpacks, mine stuffed with a change of clothes and a beat-up paperback, hers with her sketchbook and a bag of snacks, and set off. The air was cool, biting at our noses, and Sarah's hand felt warm in mine as we walked, laughing about some guy at the shelter who tried to trade a sock for a bowl of soup. When we reached the Grandview, it loomed over us, 10 stories high, its windows glinting like eyes in the dusk. The revolving door squeaked as we stepped inside, and the lobby hit us with a wave of nostalgia. High ceilings with chipped plaster molding, a chandelier that probably sparkled once but now hung dull and dusty, and a carpet that smelled faintly of mildew and lemon cleaner. Behind the front desk stood an older man, his thinning hair combed neatly over a freckled scalp, his glasses perched low on his nose. His name tag read Mr. Jenkins, and he greeted us with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Welcome to the Grandview," he said, his voice gravelly but kind. "How can I assist you today?" "We'd like a room for the weekend," I replied, sliding my ID across the counter. Sarah leaned against me, peering at the faded brochures stacked beside the check-in ledger, the MR. Jenkins tapped away at an ancient computer, the keys clacking loudly in the quiet lobby. "Room 812, 8th floor," he said after a moment, handing us 2 plastic key cards. "Enjoy your stay." The elevator was a relic, all creaky cables and flickering lights, and it jolted us upward with a groan. The 8th floor hallway stretched out long and dim, the carpet a muted green that swallowed our footsteps. Doors lined both sides, their brass numbers tarnished, and a faint hum buzzed from the fluorescent lights overhead. Room 812 was near the end, and when I swiped the key card, the lock clicked with a satisfying thunk. The room was bigger than I'd expected. A king-size bed sat against one wall, its maroon bedspread slightly frayed at the edges. There was a small sitting area with a lumpy armchair and a chipped wooden table. And then, the window. It was massive, stretching nearly floor to ceiling, covering almost the entire outer wall. Beyond it, the city sprawled out in a patchwork of lights, the skyline hazy under a thin layer of clouds. Sarah dropped her bag and flopped onto the bed, her dark hair fanning out across the pillow. "This is perfect," she said, grinning up at me. "No es norin rumats, no curfew. Just us." I laughed, tossing my backpack next to hers. "Yeah, it's a step up from cots and communal showers." We unpacked what little we brought, then decided to make the most of the hotel. First stop, the pool. It was downstairs, tucked away on the ground floor, and when we pushed through the heavy glass doors, the air hit us, warm and thick with chlorine. The pool itself was a rectangle of shimmering blue, framed by a glass ceiling that let in the last of the evening light. Tiles gleamed underfoot, slick with water, and a few lounge chairs sat empty along the edge that we changed in the locker rooms and dove in, the water enveloping us in a gentle embrace. I swam a lazy lap, then floated on my back, staring up at the glass above. That's when I heard it, a faint giggle, high-pitched and fleeting, like a child's laugh echoing off the walls. I lifted my head, water dripping into my eyes, and scanned the room. Nothing, just Sarah doing a slow backstroke, and the ripple of our wake against the tiles. "Did you hear that?" I called out, treading water. She stopped, tilting her head. "Hear what?" "Like a laugh. A kid's laugh." She smirked, splashing me lightly. "You're imagining things. It's just us down here." "Yeah, probably," I said, shaking it off. But as I climbed out and grabbed the towel, a shiver crawled up my spine, not from the cold, but from something I couldn't place. Later, we showered off the chlorine and headed out for dinner. There was a little Italian place a block away, its windows glowing with warm light. Over plates of spaghetti and glasses of cheap red wine, we talked about everything and nothing. How we met at the shelter when she'd spilled soup on my shoes, how we'd started volunteering because we both wanted to do something real, something that mattered. The food was good, the company better, and by the time we strolled back to the Grandview, night had fully settled in. The sky had deep velvet pierced by stars. Back in room 812, I flicked on the light, and that's when I saw them. Handprints. For maybe 6, smeared across the giant window. Small, delicate, unmistakably children's. They stood out starkly against the glass, illuminated by the city lights beyond, as if someone had pressed their hands there moments ago. My stomach dropped. "Sarah, look at this," I said, my voice tighter than I meant it to be. She stepped beside me, her brow furrowing. "What the? Those weren't there before, right?" "No way," I said, shaking my head. "We'd have noticed. This window's huge. We couldn't have missed them." We moved closer, inspecting the prints. They were crisp, the outlines of tiny fingers and palms etched in faint smudges, like condensation from warm hands on cold glass. At least 4 distinct sets, maybe more, clustered near the bottom, as if kids had stood there, peering out or in. Sarah reached out, then hesitated. "Maybe it's the cleaning staff," she suggested, but her tone lacked conviction. "With hands this small?" I countered. "And why would they leave prints like this?" We stood there, staring, the room suddenly feeling too quiet. I tried to replay the afternoon in my mind, checking in, dropping our bags, looking out this very window. Had we somehow overlooked them? No, impossible. They were too obvious, too present. "Let's just forget it," Sarah said finally, shrugging it off with a forced laugh. "It's weird, but it's not like it's hurting anyone." I nodded, but the unease lingered, a weight in my chest. Still, we brushed it aside, changed into pajamas, and watched some grainy TV for a while. But around 10, curiosity, or maybe nerves, got the better of me. "I'm going to ask the front desk about this," I told her, pulling on my sneakers. She raised an eyebrow. "Seriously?" "Yeah, just to see what they say." The lobby was deserted when I stepped out of the elevator, the chandelier casting long shadows across the carpet. Mr. Jenkins was still at the desk, reading a paperback with yellowed pages. He looked up as I approached, adjusting his glasses. "Evening," he said. "Everything all right?" "Not exactly," I replied, leaning on the counter. "There are handprints on our window, small ones like kids. Any idea where they came from?" His expression shifted, subtle, but I caught it. A flicker of something, maybe recognition, maybe unease. He set the book down and folded his hands. "Ah, the handprints. Yes, we've had that come up before." "What do you mean?" I pressed, my pulse quickening to his side, glancing around as if to check we were alone. "This hotel's got a bit of a history. Back in the 1970s, there was an incident. A woman stayed here on one of the top floors, room 814, I believe, just down the hall from you. Her husband had taken his own life, and it broke her. One night, she lost it completely. Took her 3 children, carried them to the window, and," he paused, his voice dropping, "she threw them over the ledge, then followed them herself." The words hit me like a punch. I pictured it. The window, so like ours, the drop below, the unimaginable despair. "Jesus," I muttered, a chill spreading through me. "So what, the place is haunted?" Mr. Jenkins shrugged, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "That's what some say. Guests have reported things over the years. Handprints, voices, odd noises. Down by the pool, folks have heard a child or a woman when no one's there. Even the old pinball machine in the game room's been known to start up on its own. But you didn't notice anything strange today, did you?" "No," I said slowly. "Well, maybe. I thought I heard a laugh by the pool. but it was nothing clear. Could be your mind playing tricks, he offered, though his eyes suggested he wasn't so sure. Don't worry too much. It's just stories. I thanked him and headed back upstairs, my head spinning. When I got to the room, Sarah was sprawled on the bed, flipping channels. I shut the door and leaned against it, still processing. So, she prompted, muting the TV. I recounted everything. The woman, the kids, the jump, the rumors of hauntings. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. That's messed up, she said. But come on, it's probably just a creepy tale they tell guests to spice things up. Those prints were there all along, and we just didn't see them. Maybe. I conceded, though I wasn't buying it. The prints looked too fresh, too deliberate. Let's try wiping them off. We grabbed some tissues from the bathroom and scrubbed at the glass. The smudges faded slightly, but didn't vanish, clinging stubbornly like they belonged there. After a minute, we gave up, the air between us thick with unspoken questions. Whatever, Sarah said, climbing under the covers. I'm not letting some old ghost story ruin our weekend. I forced a smile and joined her, turning off the lamp. The room plunged into darkness, save for the glow of the city filtering through that massive window. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the clerk's words looping in my mind. 3 children. Room 814. Handprints. Every creak of the building, every distant thud felt amplified. Once I thought I heard footsteps in the hall, quick like kids running, but when I held my breath and listened, it was just silence. Sleep didn't come easy that night. The handprints lingered in my vision, etched behind my eyelids, and with them, the weight of a story I wasn't sure I wanted to believe. The door rattled again, a sharp, insistent sound that cut through the silence like a knife. Sarah and I stood frozen, staring at the worn wood as if it might splinter apart at any moment. The air in room 812 felt thick, heavy with something I couldn't name. Fear, yes, but also anticipation, like the moment before a storm breaks. My breath caught in my throat, and I reached for Sarah's hand, her fingers cold and trembling in mine. "What the hell is that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," I said, though the lie tasted bitter. I had a guess, a terrible, impossible guess, but admitting it out loud felt like inviting whatever was out there to come closer. The rattling stopped as abruptly as it had begun, leaving an oppressive stillness in its wake. I took a tentative step toward the door, my pulse pounding in my ears. Sarah grabbed my arm, her grip tight. "Don't," she hissed. "Please don't. We can't just stand here," I said, though my legs felt like lead. "We need to know." "Know what? That this place is messed up? We already do. Let's just grab our stuff and go." She was right. Every rational part of me screamed to pack our bags, check out, and never look back. But the whispers, the handprints, the little girl's words, they like you, they clawed at my curiosity, demanding answers. One more step, I told myself. Just one more, and then we'd leave. I reached for the doorknob, my hand shaking, and turned it slowly. The lock clicked, a sound that seemed deafening in the quiet. I pulled the door open an inch, then 2, peering into the hallway beyond. It was empty, or so I thought. The dim light from the wall sconces cast long shadows across the faded carpet, and for a moment, I saw nothing unusual. Then at the far end of the corridor, near room 814, something flickered, a shape, small and fleeting like a child darting out of sight. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Sarah pressed against me, looking over my shoulder. "See what?" "There was something down there." I pointed toward room 814, its door still and silent, mocking my unease. "I don't see anything," she said, but her tone was uncertain now, her bravado slipping. "Close the door, please." I nodded, pushing it shut with more force than necessary. The lock clicked again, and I leaned against the wood, my forehead pressed to its cool surface. "Okay," I said, exhaling. "Okay, we're leaving. Right now." Sarah didn't argue. We moved quickly, throwing clothes into our bags without bothering to fold them. My hands fumbled with the zipper of my duffel, my mind racing. The handprints had vanished again, the window clear as if nothing had happened, but the memory of that child's voice, play, echoed in my skull, chilling me to the bone. Yes, Sarah shoved her sketchbook in her backpack. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then plunged us into darkness. She let out a small yelp, and I cursed under my breath, fumbling for my phone. The screen's glow cut through the black, illuminating our panicked faces. "Power outage?" she asked, her voice tight. "Maybe," I said, though I didn't believe it. "Not here, not now." I turned on the flashlight app and swept the beam across the room. Everything looked normal. The bed, the dresser, the chair by the window. But the shadows seemed deeper, more alive, stretching toward us like grasping hands. "Let's go," I said, slinging my bag over my shoulder. Sarah nodded, clutching her backpack to her chest. We moved toward the door, my flashlight beam bouncing with every step. I reached for the knob again, but before I could touch it, the lights snapped back on, blinding us for a moment. And then we heard it, a laugh. High-pitched, playful, unmistakable. It came from a hallway, clear as day, followed by the patter of small feet running past our door. I froze, my hand hovering over the knob. Sarah's eyes widened, her breath hitching. "You heard that, right?" I asked, praying she'd say yes. She nodded, her face pale. "Kids. There are no kids on this floor," I said, my voice trembling. "Not real ones." The laughter came again, fainter now, as if moving away. I yanked the door open, shining my flashlight down the hall. Empty. No kids, no shadows, nothing but the same worn carpet and peeling wallpaper. But the air felt colder, sharper, like stepping into a freezer. Sarah grabbed my arm. "We're not chasing that. We're leaving." "Yeah," I agreed, though part of me still burned to follow the sound, to see where it led. I shut the door and locked it, though I doubted a flimsy hotel lock would stop whatever was out there. That we finished packing in record time, the silence between us thick with unspoken fear. As I zipped my bag shut, a new sound started, scratching, faint but persistent, coming from the wall behind the bed. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like nails dragging across plaster. I turned, my flashlight beam landing on the faded floor wallpaper. The scratching grew louder, faster, and then stopped, leaving a ringing quiet. Sarah stared at the wall, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What now?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but we're not staying to find out." We grabbed our bags and headed for the door again. This time I didn't hesitate. I flung it open and stepped into the hallway, Sarah right behind me. The corridor stretched out, empty and silent, the lights steady now. We hurried toward the elevator, our footsteps muffled by the carpet. I pressed the call button, the ding of its arrival a small relief. The elevator doors slid open, revealing an empty car. We stepped inside, and I jabbed the button for the lobby, my heart hammering. As the doors began to close, I caught a glimpse of something in the hallway. A small figure standing near room 814, its head tilted as if watching us. The door shut before I could be sure, and the elevator jolted downward. Sarah leaned against the wall, her breathing ragged. "Did you see something again?" "Maybe," I said, not wanting to scare her more. "Probably just my imagination." She didn't respond, and the ride down felt endless, the hum of the machinery the only sound. When the doors finally opened to the lobby, I nearly sagged with relief. The space was quiet, the front desk empty, the fireplace casting a warm glow over the furniture. No sign of Mr. Jenkins or any other staff. No sign of the little girl, Emily, either did we cross the lobby quickly, our bags bumping against our legs. The front doors loomed ahead, freedom just steps away. But as we reached them, the lights flickered again, not just in the lobby, but outside too, the street lights dimming in unison. I pushed the door, expecting to swing open, but it didn't budge. I pushed harder, then yanked the handle. "Locked, what the hell?" I muttered, trying the other door. Same result. Sarah dropped her bag and pounded on the glass. "Hey, anyone out there? We're stuck." No response. The street beyond was dark, the city unnaturally still. No cars, no pedestrians, just the faint shimmer of rain on the pavement. I turned back to the lobby, searching for another exit, when I heard its soft giggle, echoing from somewhere above us. "Upstairs," Sarah whispered, her eyes darting to the ceiling. I followed her gaze, but saw nothing. The giggle came again, joined by another, then a third, children's voices, overlapping in a chorus of delight. My stomach twisted. "We need to find another way out," I said. Grabbing her hand, we headed toward the dining room, hoping for a back door. But as we passed the grand staircase, the voices grew louder, closer. I glanced up and nearly dropped my bag. 3 small figures stood on the landing, their outlines blurred in the dim light. They were children, or at least they looked like it, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, their faces pale and indistinct. One waved, a slow, deliberate motion, before they turned and ran up the stairs, their laughter trailing behind them. Sarah clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Tell me you saw that." "I did," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Come on." We bolted for the dining room, the voices fading as we ran. The space was dark, the tables empty, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee. I scanned the walls for an exit sign, my flashlight beam shaking in my hand. There, a door marked "Staff Only" near the kitchen. We rushed toward it, and this time, it opened easily, revealing a narrow service corridor. The hallway was cold, the walls bare concrete, the floor scuffed and dirty. We followed it, our breaths fogging in the chill air, until we reached another door. I pushed it open, expecting fresh air, but instead found a stairwell leading down. A sign above read "Basement." "Great," Sarah muttered. "Back where you started." "We don't have a choice," I said, stepping onto the stairs. "There's got to be a loading dock or something." The descent was steep, the air growing damper with each step. My flashlight caught glints of moisture on the walls, and the faint drip of water echoed somewhere below. At the bottom, we found the basement archive room I'd explored earlier, its shelves still lined with dusty boxes and books. But now it felt different, smaller, more confining, the shadows pressing in. "There," Sarah said, pointing to a metal door on the far wall. "That's got to be it." We crossed the room, our footsteps loud in the silence. I grabbed the handle and pulled, but it wouldn't move. "Locked." I slammed my shoulder against it, desperation fueling me, but held firm. "Damn it," I shouted, kicking the door. The sound reverberated, a hollow clang that seemed to mock us. Sarah paced, her hands in her hair. "This is insane. We're trapped." "No, we're not," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "There's another way. There has to be." Before she could respond, a noise cut through the air, a low, mechanical hum, followed by a rhythmic thumping. It was coming from above, faint but growing louder. I shone my flashlight at the ceiling, half expecting to see cracks forming, but it was just bare concrete, stained with age. "What is that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling that I listened, my mind racing. The thumping was steady, almost familiar. Then it hit me. The pinball machine. Her eyes widened. "The one in the game room?" "Yeah," I said, dread pooling in my gut. But it wasn't working. We stood there, the sound filling the basement, a relentless beat that seemed to vibrate through the walls. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped, replaced by silence, so complete it felt like the world had paused. Sarah grabbed my hand. "We need to get back upstairs. Find someone, anyone, who can let us out." I nodded, though the thought of facing those children again made my skin crawl. We retraced our steps, climbing the stairs back to the service corridor, then hurrying through the dining room. The lobby was still empty, the front doors still locked, but now the fireplace was out, the room cast in a cold, gray light. The giggling returned, softer this time, like a secret being shared. I spun around, searching for the source, but saw nothing. Sarah tugged at my sleeve. "The desk. There's got to be a phone or something." We ran to the front desk, dropping our bags behind the counter. I rummaged through papers and pens, finding an old rotary phone tucked beneath a stack of ledgers. I lifted the receiver, but there was no dial tone, just a faint static crackling like distant whispers. "Dead," I said, slamming it down. Sarah groaned, leaning against the counter. "This can't be happening." Before I could respond, the lights flickered again, and the static from the phone grew louder, spilling out even though the receiver was down. Words formed in the noise, soft, garbled, but unmistakable. "Stay play with us." Sarah backed away, her face ashen. "What the hell?" The static cut off, and the lights steadied, but the air felt charged, electric. I grabbed her hand. "We're not staying." Come on. We headed for the grand staircase, the only path left. If we couldn't get out, maybe we could find a window to break, a fire escape, anything. As we climbed, the air grew colder, the shadows thicker. The children's laughter echoed again, bouncing off the walls, impossible to pinpoint. To the second floor landing, we paused, catching our breath. The hallway stretched out, leading to the game room. The thumping started again, louder now, unmistakable. Sarah shook her head. No way. We're not going in there. We have to, I said, though my voice wavered. If it's them, maybe we can figure out what they want. They want us to play, she snapped. And I'm not doing it. I didn't have an answer. Instead, I took her hand and led her down the hall, the thumping growing louder with every step. The game room door was ajar, a sliver of light spilling out. I pushed it open, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. The pinball machine stood in the corner, its lights blazing, the scoreboard flashing random numbers. The plunger moved on its own, the ball ricocheting across the playfield with a clatter that made my teeth ache. No one was there, no hands, no players, just the machine, alive and relentless. Sarah gripped my arm. This is impossible. Before I could respond, the other arcade machines flickered to life, their screens glowing with static, their speakers crackling with distorted music. The air buzzed, and the temperature dropped, my breath visible in the beam of my flashlight. Then, from the shadows, they appeared, 3 children, their forms shimmering like heat waves. 2 boys and a girl, their clothes outdated, their eyes dark and hollow. They stood motionless, watching us, their heads tilted in unison. Play, the girl said, her voice echoing inside my skull. Sarah screamed, stumbling back. I caught her, my heart racing. What do you want? I shouted, my voice cracking. Why us? The boy in the middle stepped forward, his bare feet silent on the floor. Stay, he said, his voice soft but insistent. You hear us. The third child, the smallest, giggled and darted toward the pinball machine, his hand brushing the glass. The ball sped up, the thumping deafening now. I pulled Sarah toward the door, but it slammed shut before we could reach it, the lock clicking into place. No, Sarah cried, pounding on the wood. Let us out. The children laughed, the sound swirling around us, and the room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. My flashlight flickered, then died, plunging us into darkness lit only by the glowing machines. I fumbled for my phone, but the screen wouldn't turn on, dead, despite a full battery an hour ago. Sarah, I said, my voice trembling. We need to. The words died in my throat as the children vanished, the machines falling silent. The door creaked open an inch, then stopped. I grabbed Sarah's hand and yanked it wide, pulling her into the hallway. We ran, the laughter chasing us, the air growing colder with every step. Back at the stairwell, we didn't stop, climbing higher, searching for any way out. The 3rd floor, the 4th, every hallway looked the same, every door locked or leading nowhere. The laughter followed, a constant shadow, until we reached the 8th floor again, panting and desperate. Room 812 loomed ahead, its door ajar. Our bags were gone, the room untouched since we'd fled. But room 814, its door was open now, a black void beyond. The laughter stopped, replaced by a low, mournful wail that raised the hairs on my neck. Sarah clung to me, tears streaking her face. What do we do? I stared at room 814, the pull of it undeniable. We go in, I said, my voice steady despite the fear. We end this. She shook her head, but I stepped forward, drawn by something I couldn't explain. The wail grew louder, a mother's cry, and as I crossed the threshold, the world shifted, time slowing, the air thickening. Sarah followed, her hand in mine, and the door slammed shut behind us, sealing us in the heart of the Grandview's nightmare. The room was cold, the air stale and heavy with dust. The layout mirrored ours, bed, dresser, window, but everything was wrong. The wallpaper peeled in strips, revealing moldy plaster. The bed was unmade, its sheets yellowed and torn. And the window, God, the window, was smeared with handprints, dozens of them, pressed against the glass as if something had tried to claw its way out. The wail stopped, and silence descended, thick and suffocating. Then, from the corner, a shadow moved, a woman, her form flickering like a bad signal. She wore a long dress, her hair wild, her eyes hollow pits. She turned toward us, her mouth opening in a silent scream, and the children appeared beside her, their faces blank but their hands reaching out. "Stay," they said in unison, their voices a chorus of longing. Sarah sobbed, pressing against me. "We can't." The woman floated closer, her presence a weight on my chest. "They're mine," she whispered, her voice raw and broken. "Give them back." "We didn't take them," I shouted, my fear boiling into anger. "We don't belong here." The children giggled, and the room shook, dust raining from the ceiling. The window rattled, the handprints glowing faintly in the dark. I pulled Sarah toward the door, but it wouldn't budge, the knob icy under my hand. "Please," Sarah begged, her voice cracking. "Let us go." The woman's head tilted, her gaze piercing. "Play," she said, and the children rushed forward, their hands brushing against us, cold, insubstantial, but real enough to make my skin crawl that I swung at them, my fist passing through air, and they laughed, darting back. The room spun, the walls warping, and the wail started again, louder, angrier. Sarah sank to her knees, hands over her ears, and I knelt beside her, shouting over the noise. "We're not staying. Do you hear me? We're not yours." The woman froze, her scream cutting off. The children stopped, their heads cocked as if listening. For a moment, everything was still. Then the door flew open, slamming against the wall with a bang that echoed through the hotel. "Go," the woman said, her voice a hiss, and the children vanished, their laughter fading into nothing that we didn't hesitate. I pulled Sarah to her feet, and we stumbled into the hallway, the air warm and normal again. The door to room 814 swung shut behind us, the lock clicking with finality. We ran, down the stairs, through the lobby, past the front desk where the phone now sat silent. The front doors were unlocked, swinging open to the night air, cool, damp, alive, though we didn't stop until we were blocks away, collapsing on a bench under a streetlight, our bags lost somewhere in the hotel. Sarah buried her face in my shoulder, her body shaking with sobs, and I held her, my own heart still racing. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice raw. "I don't know," I said, staring back at the Grandview's silhouette against the sky. "But it's over, or so I hoped." The laughter was gone, the coldness lifted, but as we sat there, catching our breath, I couldn't shake the feeling that something lingered, watching, waiting, a whisper in the walls we'd never fully escape. The forest was a cathedral of shadows as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, jagged fingers of dusk across the trail. The five of us, Jake, Mia, Liam, Sarah, and me, had been hiking for hours, our boots crunching over pine needles and our breaths puffing in the crisp autumn air. We'd planned this trip to escape the grind of city life, to lose ourselves in the wild expanse of the Cascades. But now, as twilight bled into night, that escape felt more like a trap. We were deep in the woods, miles from the nearest ranger station, when the unease began to settle in. It started with the silence, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses against your ears, heavy and unnatural. The birds had stopped chirping hours ago, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Jake, our self-appointed leader, kept his flashlight trained on the path ahead, but the beam trembled slightly, betraying his calm facade. "Anyone else hear that?" Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She stopped walking, her head tilted, her dark braid swinging as she scanned the trees. "Hear what?" Liam said, adjusting his backpack. He was the skeptic of the group, always quick to dismiss anything he couldn't explain. "That rustling," Mia replied, her eyes narrowing. "It's been following us." I paused, straining to listen. At first, there was nothing, just the oppressive quiet. Then I heard it, a faint, deliberate crack of twigs, like something heavy shifting its weight in the underbrush. My stomach tightened. "She's right," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's close." Sarah hugged her arms to her chest, her blonde hair catching the last glimmers of light. "Maybe it's just a deer," she offered, though her tone lacked conviction. Jake swung his flashlight toward the sound, illuminating a tangle of ferns and shadowed trunks. "Deer don't stalk," he muttered. "Let's keep moving. The campsite's not far." We picked up the pace, our footsteps quick and uneven, the rustling growing louder, more insistent. It wasn't just behind us now. It was all around, circling, closing in. My heart hammered against my ribs, and I gripped the straps of my pack tighter, as if that could anchor me to reason. We'd seen glimpses earlier, flashes of movement in the trees, too fast to identify, but we'd chalked it up to fatigue, to imagination. Now, I wasn't so sure. The trail opened into a small clearing, a patch of flat ground ringed by towering pines. Jake dropped his pack and pulled out the map, his hands shaking as he unfolded it. "This is it," he said, pointing to a scribbled X. "We'll set up here. Whatever's out there, it'll back off once we've got a fire going." We worked in tense silence, pitching tents and gathering wood. The rustling had stopped, but the air felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. Liam struck a match, and the fire flared to life, casting flickering shadows across the clearing. For a moment, we breathed easier, the warmth pushing back the dark. Then Mia screamed that we spun toward her. She stood at the edge of the clearing, her flashlight pointed into the trees, her face pale as bone. "There," she choked out, jabbing a finger. I saw it. I followed her beam, and my blood ran cold. Something stood just beyond the firelight. A hulking shape, taller than any man, its silhouette jagged and wrong. It shifted, and two glinting eyes caught the light, burning like embers in the gloom. A low, guttural growl rumbled through the air, vibrating in my chest. "What the hell is that?" Liam stammered, backing toward the fire. "Stay together," Jake shouted, grabbing a stick from the pile and brandishing it like a weapon. "Don't let it." The creature lunged at IT, burst from the trees in a blur of muscle and shadow, its form both animal and nightmare. Its body was broad and sinewy, covered in coarse, matted fur that shimmered wetly in the firelight. Claws gleamed at the ends of long, twisted limbs, and its face, God, its face, was a grotesque mask of sharp teeth and hollow eyes, stretched into a snarl that promised death. It moved with terrifying speed, closing the distance in seconds. Sarah shrieked and stumbled back, tripping over a tent peg. I grabbed her arm, yanking her up as the creature swiped at the air where she'd been. Jake swung his stick, connecting with its flank, but it barely flinched, its growl deepening into a roar that shook the ground. "Run," Mia yelled, already sprinting toward the trail. We didn't hesitate. The fire was behind us, the creature between us and our gear, and survival was all that mattered now. We tore through the forest, branches clawing at our faces, roots snagging our feet. The creature's growls echoed behind us, punctuated by the crash of undergrowth as it gave chase. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I kept moving, driven by raw, primal fear. I could hear the others, Jake shouting directions, Sarah sobbing, Liam cursing, but the creature's presence drowned it all out, a relentless force bearing down on us. The trail twisted downhill, and we stumbled into a ravine, the ground slick with moss and mud. "There!" Jake pointed to a narrow crevice in the rock face, barely wide enough for a person. "Get in." We squeezed inside, pressing ourselves against the cold stone as the creature's shadow loomed outside. Its claws scraped against the rock, sending sparks flying, and its snarls filled the air, deafening and furious. I held my breath, my body wedged between Mia and Sarah, waiting for it to reach in and drag us out. But it didn't. After what felt like hours, the growls faded, replaced by the distant snap of twigs as it retreated. We stayed there, trembling, until the first light of dawn crept into the crevice, painting the walls in soft gold. "Is it gone?" Sarah whispered, her voice hoarse. "I think so," Jake said, peering out. "We need to move. Now." We emerged, battered and exhausted, and made our way back to the trail. The campsite was a ruin, tents shredded, gear scattered, the fire long dead. We didn't stop to salvage anything. We hiked out in silence, the forest waking around us, birdsong filling the air as if nothing had happened. By midday, we reached the ranger station, collapsing on the porch as a ranger rushed out to meet us. We told him everything, though his skeptical frown said he didn't believe a word. "Probably a bear," he muttered, handing us water. "You're lucky to be alive." A bear. I almost laughed. Bears didn't move like that, didn't look like that. But I didn't argue. We were safe, and that was enough. Underscore, 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 underscore back in the city. Life resumed its rhythm, but we were different. Mia threw herself into research, scouring old records for tales of creatures in the Cascades. Liam swore off hiking forever, his bravado replaced by a quiet unease. Sarah clung to routine, baking cookies and forcing smiles, as if normalcy could erase the memory. Jake retreated into himself, staring out windows for hours, lost in thought. And me? I couldn't sleep. The creature haunted my dreams. Its eyes, its teeth, the way it had hunted us with purpose. I'd wake up gasping, the sound of its growl still ringing in my ears. But as the weeks passed, something shifted. The fear didn't fade, but it sharpened into clarity, into a lesson I couldn't ignore that we'd gone into the woods unprepared, cocky, treating nature like a playground. We'd ignored the signs, the silence, the shadows, until it was too late. That creature, whatever it was, had taught us humility, respect for the unknown. It had shown us that some things can't be explained or controlled, only survived that I learned that friendship is a lifeline, too. In that ravine, pressed together in the dark, we'd held each other up, kept each other sane. Without them, I wouldn't have made it. And I learned that facing fear, real, visceral fear, changes you. It strips away pretense, leaves you raw and honest, and forces you to find strength you didn't know you had. The woods are still out there, vast and wild, holding secrets we'll never fully grasp. I don't know if that creature was real or something born of exhaustion and terror, but it doesn't matter. It was real to us, and it left its mark, not just in scars and sleepless nights, but in the way we live now, more aware, more connected, more alive. For looking back on that night in the Cascades, I realized it was more than just a brush with danger. It was a mirror held up to who we were and who we could become. The incident taught me that the world is bigger and wilder than we often admit, full of mysteries that defy our understanding. We walked into those woods thinking we were invincible, but we came out humbled, reminded that nature isn't ours to conquer. It's ours to respect. I learned the strength of unity, too. Alone, any one of us would have faltered, but together, we found the will to keep going, to survive. And I learned that fear isn't just something to run from. It's a teacher, a guide that shows you your limits and pushes you beyond them. That creature, real or not, changed us. It left us with a deeper appreciation for life, for each other, and for the fragile balance we walk between the known and the unknown. And that's a lesson I'll carry forever.